What's good, guys? So, welcome back to the podcast. Now, this is a bit of a weird setup for me. If you're watching, then you'll see that I am by myself, and I very much feel like a bit of a news presenter right now. Not had to look at the camera in a while, so that's going to be a weird one for me to get used to. But we are going to dive into things because it's been a while. You're probably thinking, where's the podcast went? Why am I by myself? And by this point, I'm assuming you've clicked on the podcast. You're probably going to be thinking it's not called the Lift Lounge anymore. There's been some rebranding, and that is because I am rebranding some of the coaching service as well. So there's a few things for us to dive into. So we're just going to have a bit of a catch up first, to be honest. I do want this to be more of a conversation. Like, I don't want it to be too serious. I'm, of course, here to deliver value to you guys, but I don't want it to just come on and me to just, fact after fact after fact, just spurt information at you. I want it to be more relaxed as well. So what have I been doing? Bit of a catch up. Last time we spoke on the podcast was probably at the beginning of the year, I would imagine, or maybe even last year. I'm not even 100% sure. But since then, we went to Australia at the beginning of the year. We have done my first ultramarathon, which I suppose kind of includes my first marathon as well. I've not actually done like an official marathon, but there was a marathon inside the ultra. And yeah, now we're rebranding. So there's quite a lot for us to chat about. Now, kind of wanted to chat about what I've been up to when I was in Australia, and how I kind of got a bit of an appreciation for how people live their life over there, because that does link into what I'm going to be chatting about later on with the rebrand and whatnot, and just the respect that they have for their general health and fitness, not just training really hard, because anyone can train really hard, doesn't really matter where you are, but also kind of how they prioritize their food, their movement, their routine, and things like owning their morning. It gave me a bit of an insight into creating that balance. That's a word that gets thrown around quite a lot when it comes to health and fitness goals, is balance. You don't want to do too much of one thing and then let it become, a detriment to your progress. You don't want to go and do, you don't want to cut out too much from your lifestyle and start, not enjoying the process of anything. It's, everyone's always talking about balance. And I think that's something that they do really well over there. And, coming back inspired from that and trying to inject some of that into what I'm doing and what I'm trying to help my clients do, and how we're trying to have more than just this focus on fitness and visuals and looking good, but also like feeling good, and how you structure your day and prioritize your day, what parts of the day that you take advantage of, and how that aligns with your specific routine and your specific structure in terms of maybe what you do for a living, what you do for your job and whatnot. So we'll come back to that and we'll touch on that when we chat about the rebranding. But let's also just touch on the ultramarathon, because that was a few weeks ago now, and I've had lots of lovely messages from people saying well done and congratulations and whatnot. And we raised a good amount of money for charity. I think it was about £1,500 that we raised, which is absolutely amazing. Done that for the British Heart Foundation, a charity that's very, very close to mine and my family's hearts. So it was really, really good to raise a good amount of money for them and donate that, doing it for a really good cause. But I wanted to kind of touch on, what did I learn from this within catching up? So what did I learn from doing an ultramarathon from someone about 18 months ago, didn't really run too consistently? So the main takeaway message that I want to try and get across to you guys that's listening as well is that good preparation will lead to an unbreakable mindset, or should lead to an unbreakable mindset. When I was going through the ultra marathon, my body was somewhat starting to give up a little bit towards the end. So whether that was kind of sore joints, cramping, pretty tired. However, my mind was still really, really strong, and I still knew that I could get to the end, and I still knew that I wasn't going to fail, and I still knew that I was going to eventually cross that finish line, whether I was running, crawling, getting pushed. It wasn't really up for debate. I was still going to get across that finish line. But there could have been a lot more in the tank physically if I had fueled better, used the aid stations better, things like that. I didn't really take full advantage of them. But mentally, I was there. Like, mentally, I knew that no matter what, I was going to get across that finish line. I didn't really have too much more to give mentally. I think that's really, really important, because if you show up for yourself day in, day out, physically, you put in the work, you should be pretty comfortable when it comes to your mindset that, okay, I've actually prepared for whatever it is that I'm trying to do. You know, I've spent weeks, months, years, whatever it is leading up to this. You've built this confidence, or you should have built this confidence that the day itself is really just like your victory lap. Like, the day itself is, in the grand scheme of things, not as hard as the weeks and months and years of training that you've put in order to get to the day, to get to that event. So that's kind of the main message that I wanted to take away from that, and I wanted to share with you guys. Just, again, quickly catching up here. Don't want to make this bit too long, to be honest. And then what's goals for next year? Some cycling goals. Maybe want to do, I say next year, the rest of this year and maybe next year. Got some cycling goals, so getting into some cycling now, if anyone's seen that on the stories. Another ultramarathon, perhaps, around October time. I'd quite like to do an all-out marathon effort, so try and get a marathon PB. I'd quite like to improve on my current half marathon PB, which we actually set out in Australia when we were there. So we done a Sydney half marathon, which was for neuroblastoma. They were doing that for. So that was around one of the parks in Sydney's 4 laps. So 4 or 5K loops. The first one was 6 and a bit, obviously, to get you up to 21K. So the first one was a little bit longer, and then 4 laps of that in the heat. I must say it was pretty challenging. That's the first time I've started to experience cramps within a race as well. I think I got to mile 9 or so, and the left hamstring was starting to twitch, and it was starting to just slightly cramp, which was not great. But we got a PB out there, so 1:26, 1 hour 26. So I want to try and PB on that because it was really hot. I wasn't used to it. And then also on the last lap, the last 5K group. Now I'm not using excuses here. But the last 5K group set off as I was coming through for my final lap. So I had about 1,000 people. No, I say it wasn't 1,000. I had a couple hundred people to try and weave in and out of. Flying elbows were present, trying to weave in and out of people. So that definitely wasn't ideal going into the last lap when I was pretty fatigued. But I definitely think we could maybe knock a couple of minutes off that. So I'd quite like to get a new half marathon PB as well. And then I want to do these goals while not losing any muscle, which is kind of the main thing. And again, that links into why my coaching is, not why my coaching is rebranding, but it does link into the rebrand itself. So we've spoke a lot about that. We spoke a lot about the rebranding of the coaching. So let's dive into that and why that's happening. So first of all, it kind of links into my story. So this is a good place to start it. So I have been more so focused on a bodybuilding approach to training, as you could say, for the past sort of, in total, coming up on about 8 years now. The past year and a half, that's changed a little bit. So you could say for maybe the first sort of 6.5, 7 years, it was mainly sort of bodybuilding focused, hypertrophy focused in the gym, trying to put on muscle. And after doing that for a really long period of time, I kind of found myself getting into these cycles of, I would bulk for, let's say, 8 months of the year. And I'd get to a point where I was pretty uncomfortable for a large portion of the year. I was carrying too much body fat for what I'd like. I was looking in the mirror. I wasn't really enjoying what I was seeing in the mirror. And I didn't feel good day to day. So energy levels were pretty poor, doing things like going up the stairs quickly. I'd be out of breath just because I was trying to push more muscle on my physique and push generally just more body weight on. And this just led to me not feeling great or looking great. And then for the other 4 months of the year, I'd find myself going on a cut. Now, the cut would start off pretty gradual, but the last few weeks, if anyone's done a diet to this, they'll know that it ramps up, the intensity ramps up. And with that cut, yes, I seen myself starting to look better and better in the mirror, but still feel pretty awful because I was on low calories. So then again, I had low energy levels and I wasn't enjoying how I was feeling. So when I was bulking, I wasn't enjoying how I was feeling or looking. And then when I was cutting, I enjoyed how I looked, but I didn't enjoy how I felt. And yeah, that would only be sustainable for a few weeks anyway. You get down to these levels of leanness where you start getting all these cravings, you start having to come back out of your diet. You can't sustain, being that lean forever. So you wouldn't even really be that lean for that long. And then you found yourself just going back into a bulk because you wanted to repeat the whole process. And I found this it got pretty boring, if for lack of a better term. Like, I just got bored of it. It got to a point where I'd been doing it for so long that the amount of muscle that I was going to be able to put on my physique naturally was very, very minimal. So a couple of years in a row, I'd bulk up and cut down, and there would be little difference in body weight, a few pounds. But visually, again, not like a crazy, crazy difference. Obviously, looking a little bit better each time I done it, but what I was sacrificing wasn't living up to how much change I was seeing in the mirror and how I felt year to year, right? So I decided to go about things a little bit differently because I wasn't enjoying it. So I wanted to previously compete, not because I wanted myself to compete, just because other people were competing, and other people were saying that I should compete. And then after deciding that wasn't actually something that I wanted to do, it was much easier for me to then detach from a very strict bodybuilding approach and think, right, okay, I actually don't want to get on stage. So why am I doing this? Why am I repeating this cycle? Let's maybe look at doing something else. Now, I also felt as though I'd lost a little bit of my identity because I'd always been somewhat active going through school. I'd always done some form of sport. When I was younger, played football, then went into golf and was always active at school. So I was always kind of doing something, and I was always in that sort of competition, either with myself or with people around me. And everything that comes with that, like the social aspect of that, maybe perhaps being like in a team, and then that competition, that rivalry as well. And I felt like I'd kind of lost a lot of that just for the sake of bulking and cutting and bulking and cutting and trying to change just how I looked and kind of only how I looked, doing that at the detriment of how I felt. So that is why I started running about a year and a half ago. So started running. It was something else for me to progress. It was just something else for me to do where I could create some positive feedback loops. Week to week, I could see myself either, feeling fitter, getting quicker, my heart rate coming down, feeling better after I'd ticked certain runs off, running for longer, whatever it might be. I was getting these positive feedback loops from something else, which made me feel good and wasn't just something that I was using to make myself look different. But I wanted to do this without losing muscle. I feel like I had something to prove because I'd previously spent all these years building my physique. I didn't want to then just throw that away, of course. I wanted to try and do something that was going to challenge me performance-wise, but also allow me to look good while doing it and not look like your quote-unquote like stereotypical runner. I know there's not a runners come in all shapes and sizes. I'm not saying that runners look a certain way, but if you think about your stereotypical sort of like marathon runner, like the famous ones, I didn't want to look like that. I wanted to look as though I had a decent amount of muscle, like I'd spent a long time building a physique, but I could also move relatively well. So I felt like I had something to kind of prove, and I was being relatively stubborn there. But yeah, it made me feel good. My fitness levels were improving. I actually felt good across the day, and it was really, really easy to notice that. Like I just felt generally better. I felt healthier and I felt fitter. But it also created more flexibility across my lifestyle. All of a sudden, my output was, way higher. So actually maintaining some level of condition became a little bit easier. I wouldn't say it became easy. It's definitely became easier just because my general output and amount of calories I burn across the day. If I have like a run day or a double training day or maybe out cycling, it's generally a lot higher. So I can afford to replenish a little bit more of what I've lost. So that then meant that I could maintain condition levels, and I can maintain condition levels a hell of a lot easier, but not really feel as though I'm missing out on flexibility within food and maybe going out for meals, spending more quality time with my girlfriend, friends, socializing. And it wasn't going to come this detrimental impact to my physique and, that sort of mindset that I used to have of, oh, what happens if I, go over on calories, or what happens if I don't get enough calories? Kind of eliminated that a little bit, and it's continuing to eliminate that a little bit. So this was a big reason at the beginning. Not so much now, because I don't go out and do these things so that I can then eat certain food. That's definitely not the case. The reason that I've been pretty consistent with running and adding more training modalities into my lifestyle is because I genuinely do love them. I genuinely do really, really enjoy them. So even if I had to, let's say, go on a diet right now, I would still be running. I'd still be doing all these different training modalities, and I would still find a way to, diet and perhaps lose body weight or lose body fat. So at the start, that was, a reason. Not so much now, but it definitely allows me to have a little bit more flexibility for sure. Now, since then, I have then added in, more running. I've added in some cycling work. I've even added in some high intensity work to my training. But, and that's like a big point there, but I've still kept the hypertrophy work in because I still enjoy the more bodybuilding approach to things. And like I said, I've spent the past 6-7 years trying to build this physique. I don't just want to go and let it completely fall down the drain. So we've still got the hypertrophy based work in there, and we're then just supplementing a little bit of different training modalities into the hypertrophy work, because I do enjoy all of it. So if I can still look how I want to look and maintain that look, and then perform better across varying sports, then that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that is the main goal. So the main reason that I'm chatting about all this is because I want to feel as though I'm always ready for whatever it is that I choose to pursue. So if someone says to me, let's go for a run, I feel like I'm ready to go for a run. Let's go for a cycle. I feel like I'm ready to go for a cycle. Let's go and do a high rocks workout. I'll say yes, let's go and do that. Or if someone says, let's just go to the gym and get a good pump and, shift some weight around, I'm still very comfortable doing that. I want to be able to say yes to all of these things. But at the same time, if someone was to turn around to me and say, you want to go on holiday? I also want to be able to, without really thinking about it, just say yes to the fact that I can go and I can take my top off and I can look good and feel confident in my physique and what I'm showcasing underneath. And that's what I want to help other people with. And that's the rebrand. So if you clicked on this podcast, you'll probably notice that we have rebranded to the Axion podcast. That links into Axion Coaching, which is, of course, the rebrand of my online coaching. So why Axion? You're probably thinking, what is that? Axion they're actually theoretical particles. Now, if they exist, there's two things. They're always in motion, and they're tiny, but they have massive effects, right? Massive gravitational effects. So this kind of links into training. I want to help people be moving and always be in movement, progressing towards better performance. But the changes that come from changing small habits across your lifestyle and training, etc., they always have the biggest, or a huge, if not the biggest impact across your goals, across your life, across your lifestyle. So that's why Axion links into movement and small changes that are going to create big results. So I now want to help you guys stay ready the way that I feel right now. I want to help guys unlock their full potential, their best physique yet, stay lean year round, not just get lean for a holiday and then they're back to where they were a couple months or a couple weeks after. I want to help them get lean and stay ready year round for whatever they have planned, whether that's a holiday, whether it's a half marathon, a marathon, an ultramarathon, whether that's, they're trying to juggle their sport, whether it maybe be football or anything, you want to juggle their sport while staying in shape. I want them to feel as though they're ready for whatever it is that they choose to pursue. Because I believe that will lead to them, or lead to you listening to this, feeling you're most fulfilled and also you're most confident, not just for a few weeks or a few months, but for the full year round. Looking good, feeling good, and performing good. Want to get all of them in the picture. So with that is a very quick introduction to the new podcast. It's a bit of a catch up with me. It's why we're rebranding. So I'll end it on the note and I'll say, stay moving, stay ready, because that is the motto of Axion Coaching. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening. There's going to be another podcast dropping right after this one, which I'm about to film, which will be a little bit more specific and not just a random catch up with me, but I felt as though I had to chat about a few things there, chat about where I'd been, chat about what's going on, chat about why the podcast is changing, why coaching is changing, and yeah, just give you a little bit of an insight into that. So thanks very much for listening. If you want more content, then please head over to Instagram or TikTok. The YouTube will be back up and running soon as well. And the best thing you can do to help me on this podcast journey now is to just share it with a friend. To be honest, I'm not going to ask you to go and share it on your story or subscribe or, comment or whatever it is, leave a rating. If there's anything within these podcasts that you think that one of your friends could benefit from, just send it to them. Just share it to them and say, listen to this about 5 minutes in or whatever it is and say, I think you could maybe benefit from this or I think you would enjoy this. And that would mean a lot to me. That would help me. But catch you in the next one. Cheers, guys.